Welcome to the LifePro Podcast, where today I have the pleasure of having Brianna Burrows as my guest. She's a career coach, and our topic for the day is work-life balance, which is something that's really a hot topic for me, and it's something that I struggle with, so I'm excited to talk about that. Welcome to the show, Brianna. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing really well. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out, and I'm really excited to just chat with you about how we can improve our work-life balance.
Fantastic. Why don't you start out by telling everybody about your journey and a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, throughout my 20s, I kind of wandered through many different career paths and eventually decided to dabble into getting into tech. And I went back to school to learn software engineering and then got into working as a software engineer for about 5 years. And through that journey, I really struggled with so many different things that a lot of people experience, like imposter syndrome, self-worth, stress, and anxiety. And finally got to a place in my career where I felt like I got a little bit more confidence in knowing what I'm good at and what are my skill sets. And then got into a management role in software engineering and really started looking at how I can help other people who are also on that journey through tech or even the corporate world really feel comfortable in their skin and have their needs met, and especially around the balance between work-life balance. And so now I really focus on helping people in the tech industry just find that sweet spot between life and work. And so I still work for a 9-to-5 corporate job as a manager. And then outside, I also work in the coaching space to help people succeed in whatever they're struggling with in their life between career and life, really.
Why did you decide to be a coach? What prompted you to make that decision?
Yeah, the biggest inspiration for me was my own journey and how much I had my own coach and how that really helped me go level up and really enlightened me to some of the things I was experiencing. And it was just tremendously helpful. And so I really wanted to give back to my community in that way. And especially for people in the tech industry, it's such an underserved community of people. It's really high stress, moves really fast. And I really thought about my own journey and thinking if I had had someone like myself really helping me along that way, or even just seeing the things that I've seen on social media, oh God, it would have been so much more helpful, less stressful. I would have had like some more support. And so I really just wanted to offer that to people and give back. So that's what inspired me, was my own journey.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. My business coach helps kind of keep me in line, and helps me kind of, find balance. And that's what we're talking about today is work-life balance. And whether you're single or married with kids, I think it's a hot topic and it's a struggle for a lot of different people. So my first question to you is, what is work-life balance to you? What does that mean?
Yeah. So work-life balance, often people have the idea that first of all, there is balance, like it's a teeter-totter. And they're trying to get to this level playing field. And I actually really like to disband that whole mentality, because really life is about seasons. We go through different periods of our life where maybe work is more of a priority. And then, the other stuff maybe like family time or vacation time, or other maybe like the hobbies kind of on the lower end of the priority. And then other times it's going to maybe get a little closer to that teeter totter, and then maybe it's going to switch. And it's knowing that the balance is really having the right tools to cope with when the switches are going up and down. So we're letting go the expectation that work-life balance is a flat horizontal teeter-totter is really important. And so I really help my clients understand that no matter which season they're in, whether they're enjoying the hobbies and work is not as much of a priority, and then maybe it switches and they have to take a little less time for their family and put career first, that they have the tools in each of those phases to be able to really cope and give themselves what they need in those time periods. So if they still need some family time while career is really high up, they can get those things met because they're using tools like boundaries and communication and so forth. So work-life balance is really just understanding what tools you need to be able to cope with which season of the balance you're in.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on different spectrums myself. I've been in a 9-to-5 where I'm watching the clock and waiting for 5 o'clock so I can run out of there. And then I've been in a career where like you have to kind of pull me out of the office because I really enjoy what I'm doing. And I think a lot of that is important, right? First is finding a career path that you enjoy and
Totally.
you're pulled to do your work, not necessarily pushing yourself to do your work. So I always, before we even get to work-life balance, making the right career choice is step A, something that you enjoy. And if you have the right career, it's not really work. It's you're having fun and getting paid for it. But that being said, we all have responsibilities in life, and there's whether family or even me time.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for people just to reflect back on, like, what their current situation is like, and really make a determination whether they need to make a change?
Yeah, I love what you brought up about, having a career that sometimes doesn't feel like work and feels enjoyable. You have fun and creativity. And what really highlights for me is the fact that you need to understand what your values are. So if you really value more family time in your career, then you need to find a job that supports that. Now, if you really value a career that has a lot of career opportunities, and maybe you're a single person and you don't want to have kids, then you need to find a job that supports that. So really taking time to understand what do you value, and then prioritizing that's really important. And that goes hand in hand with having me time, because when you understand what you value, and values can be anything from what you eat, how you take care of your body, the relationships you want to have, where do you want to spend your time in terms of your career, right? The whole encompassing like life spectrum. Once you understand those things, then you can really understand how that incorporates also into me time. And really, me time, I like to say, is like self-care, because it's really getting yourself to be able to then be present in the other aspects of life. And so what that looks like, though, is really dependent upon every person. But I will say, in our society today, that concept tends to get put down on the pedestal, because there is a mentality that we need to put other people first before ourselves. And that's not sustainable. And that leads to a lot of things like burnout, physical symptoms of exhaustion, leads to even things like depression and anxiety. So really taking care of yourself is something that you need to do, really a reflective thing, and really going inside and understanding, well, how much do I need? When am I feeling these other things come up? Like I'm getting a little irritable. Maybe I need to like take a moment and really see, am I getting actually what I need in terms of my own self-care? Maybe that is more family time. Maybe that's actually alone time. So it's really taking time to understand yourself, which is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
And something that I really encourage my clients to work through, and understanding, well, where are they at right now? Where are they spending their time in all aspects of their life? And then based on what they're struggling with, we close the gap based on what they want. And then we make adjustments based on that. So me time is so personal, but for the most part, everybody needs it. So I'm curious for you, how do you, find that balance between giving yourself self-care and then meeting the needs of other people?
Yeah, for me, it's all about time blocks, right? Scheduling, making sure that I'm scheduling work, scheduling me time. I have my hobbies, and I'm, weekends are a lot about my family. So I try to spend more quality time with my kids. And it also begs another question back at you is, well, I have an office. I drive to my office when I'm here, whatever it is, 9 to 5, and I'm doing my work. I go home and I shut off work. I don't want to talk about work. I just want to focus on either me or my family. But what's changed through the pandemic is a lot of people work from home, as you do. How has that changed with, like the lines between being home and doing home things and being at work? Like, how has that changed everything for you or for society?
Yeah, totally. And it's changed for a lot of people. And they've done now a lot of studies that have shown that since the pandemic, especially for people who work from home, that line has gotten really blurred. That actually people are working more, after work hours, because there is no disassociation from the physical space of confinements of this is where I work and now this is home space. And so for some people, this has become a really big struggle. And the struggle really is in terms of setting boundaries. And this is a huge aspect that I work with other people with, and something I've also had to learn myself in my own journey. And so really, again, it goes back to understanding, what do you value? Like, if you value wanting to have genuine relationships and connections with your friends and family, then you need to put that desire into action and set boundaries in place there. So that means, what does a boundary look like in terms of dividing work and family time or your hobbies? Well, when you're done with work, you mute your notifications, like turn off Slack, Teams. Like, if you're not available during those hours, and you should not be reachable. Obviously, this is so dependent upon the job you have. If you're a doctor, obviously you can't mute your pager or anything. But for most people working in that corporate environment, they need to understand that when they're done working, they are done. And they need to make sure that they are not getting bombarded with notifications, emails, and really, again, creating a distinction mentally of when is work and when is life. And something I also recommend people doing is sometimes creating a little bit of a ritual or habit to transition. So let's say you're working from home and you're done for work for the day. And so that could be an activity that kind of helps you transition. Could be you write in a journal, like the highlight of your work day. And when you're done writing, okay, you're done with working. No more. Everything's muted, whatever it is you need. It could be you take 5 minutes to meditate, and then now you're done with work. It could be you always exercise after work. But finding a little ritual to help you transition is really helpful for your mind and body to go, okay, we're done with working. I might not be done in the sense like I've moved from my office that was at a corporate environment to my house, but we've now changed the environment and the energy through just that little ritual.
Yeah. I mean, I love what you said about boundaries and all the, as far as having, area of space where you're working and area of space where you're playing or you're relaxing or whatever, and find that real balance that works for you. But, I think that a lot of people tend to work excessively because they're motivated by wealth or security, being able to buy pristine things that they think will give them gratitude. Can you touch on that a little bit? Why do you think we're so motivated by accumulation of wealth? Why is it, especially people in my circle, and I've had this discussion, is how much is enough? Why do we need abundance? Maybe you can kind of shed some light on that.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's funny. I actually think my personal philosophy is that actually people overwork because it's a compensation usually for some aspect of their experience during childhood that they're compensating for. So usually that boils down to it's a coping mechanism. Oftentimes overworking and overachieving is a coping thing for, again, something they did not get in their childhood experience. So but that also goes hand in hand with that concept of security. So maybe there wasn't a lot of security in their childhood, and the way they wanted to cope with that was through working really hard, or the belief they had to work hard and work a lot, which is actually maybe not necessarily true. So it's really, so it's such a personal topic, but it's also a cultural topic because our society also then perpetrates this. It's one of the things that actually, as a coping mechanism, we encourage and acknowledge people, oh, you worked 80 hours. Good for you. You were a hard worker.
Yeah.
But it's not healthy at all. It's not productive. That person probably hasn't seen their family and their friends for weeks on end. Maybe they're not sleeping. So it's really a cultural attitude that we need to adjust. And there are countries that are starting to realize this. If you look at Europe in terms of some countries are implementing a 4-day work week. Some are implementing a 35 hours, a full-time work week. They're starting to realize that this mentality of excessive working is not conducive to our human experience at all. And, this is where it takes a little bit of that, like working with a coach or a therapist to understand if you're working a ton and this is fulfilling a need, what is the trade-off from that? What are you choosing not to feel in order to keep working, right?
Yeah.
And then, another thing is it ties into the whole, capitalistic mentality of like, it's never enough, right? If it's like, well, what is the point in which you realize I am comfortable with what I have financially and I don't need more? So recognizing that as human beings, we live in a society where there are a lot of things we're born into without even realizing that we're born into. And one of those things happens to be the mentality of overworking and always feeling like there's never enough. And so really putting boundaries and working on that stuff yourself is it's a journey, but it's important to unravel so that you don't subscribe to that unconsciously, because a lot of us are. And so it can be a very, very long journey to realize that it's a choice, but it's a choice to also unlearn it.
Yeah. Well, as an entrepreneur, I subscribe to the mentality of work smarter, not harder.
Yes. Yes.
What does that mean to you? Like, what do you think about that?
First of all, I love that saying, because I think we put so much emphasis on working hard, and it ties into that overcompensation, right? That we tend to do when we don't want to deal with something. So working smarter for me means acknowledging, like, what are the areas in your life that you might need support in? Understanding that you're not going to know everything, and that's okay. We're not going to know it all. And knowing that when you're struggling, it's okay to ask for help. So if, like, for example, if you're starting a new business and you have no idea where to start, go find a business coach, go find a mentor. If you're struggling to, grow in your career, or you're having some issues and, with your manager and you're not getting support you need, go find a mentor, a counselor, a coach. So that is a big part of working smarter, is first acknowledging that you won't be able to do everything. Get support that you need. And then again, I'm going to go back to this thing around boundaries, because it is so important to know how to use your time. It is the only resource that we do not ever get back. And if you find that you are not using your time wisely, or it's bleeding into other areas, or other people are actually dominating the use of your time, you've got to learn how to take your power back and set boundaries for yourself. Otherwise, you will just be in an endless spiral of someone else telling you how to use your time.
Right. So another thing that I ran into as an entrepreneur, and I had some employees that actually came out and told me that they love work. We created an environment where they're happy and they enjoyed their work. And they told me they would come to work as a getaway from their problems outside of work. So I
wow, that's an unusual.
Yeah, because
usually it's the other way around.
I mean, life is tough, right? Like we have to deal with illness and challenges, or maybe relationships that we are in that are not very healthy. So people actually get away, and it creates that stability at work that they don't have elsewhere. And obviously, without getting too deep, like what are your thoughts on that? And what can be done to improve that situation?
Yeah, totally. The reality is that work and all the other stuff we like to say outside of work, like relationships and hobbies and family, like it's all the same. It's all part of like the life experience, and all affect each other. Think about like when you're struggling maybe with an intimate relationship with your partner, your wife, your husband, whatever. Think about how much the rest of the day does not really go well. Like you don't feel good. You might be in a slump. So like there's no blurring that like there's no distinctive line. It all crosses over. And so one of the things I really make clear as a manager who has employees, that like I deeply care about your whole entire life experience as a holistic human being, because they're all interconnected. So for people who are in positions where they are managing people, you need to start looking at the human being in front of you as a whole and complete person who does not have this line between, oh, you're here to do a job and that's the only thing I care about. because every other aspect of their life deeply affects how they show up in their job. So really looking at these people as whole people is going to drastically improve and affect the relationship that you have with them. So, you know, getting to know who they are, what are the things they like to do outside of work? What are the things they're struggling with outside of work? How can you support them in that? Not just what they're doing inside of work, but also outside of work, because again, it's all connected. So, you know, I love to hear that there are people who were coming to, you know,
work as a shelter.
That were like, it was a shelter because they felt safe.
Yeah.
That is a huge thing. They felt safe enough to be able to have an experience with you where they felt like they could either be themselves, didn't have to worry about problems. So, you know, that's a beautiful thing that you've created, because a lot of work environments don't create that. And that's really important to creating a great space, is to provide safety by really building that rapport and trust with them, not just about the work. What else is going outside of their life? Because that's equally as important.
Yeah. Well, and I think all of that comes down to communication, whether it's your boss, your employee, or even your relationships outside. It's about building that rapport through effective communication. So that's, you know, that's one thing that I would suggest everybody is, you know, really focus on communication. And that helps you as far as like a path, not only communicating with your relationships, but communicating with yourself, having internal dialogue and really self-reflection as far as like how to get to that point where you have the ideal work-life balance. Like there's really no perfect formula for work-life balance. It's going to be very unique to everybody. But sometimes we get involved in our situation and we don't take that moment to just step back for a minute and just really reflect on how we can improve ourselves. Because by improving ourselves, we're improving our relationships, we're improving our careers, and we're making the right decisions. And by having those relationships with internally and externally. So communication is key.
It's fundamental. I mean, as human beings, that's what, you know, differentiates us in terms of a lot of other species, is our ability to communicate at a very high functioning level. And I love the point you made about being able to have a relationship with ourselves, because that's really where it all starts first. You know, if we don't have that relationship with ourselves, we can't really then come from a place of where that cup is full to people then have relationships with other people. And if we don't love ourselves, if we don't treat ourselves well, then how can we expect us to do it for other people, and then them to do the same for us when we're not even meeting ourselves at least at 100%?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. Well, LifePro Podcast is, you know, I call it the manual to life, because everything in life comes with a manual except for life itself. Yeah. And our platform here is, you know, with every podcast, we want to kind of send a message and help, you know, people absorb this information and hopefully do positive with their life and have a better life. That being said, one thing I ask all my guests is, what's one thing you want to teach the world? It doesn't have to be about work-life balance, but what is one thing that message that you have for everybody listening?
Yeah. The one thing I would love to teach the world is that, you know, we have full autonomy to make our lives whatever it is we want. It's really deciding that you are the creator and the conductor of your life. And the first step to doing that is taking accountability and responsibility for your choices. So it's really going from that victim mentality that everything is happening to me, and it's really taking it as everything is happening for me, and that there's a lesson in everything. So if there's anything I could to teach the world, is that really start owning your choices in the life that you want, because you have the power to do so. Society is going to tell you so many different other things. Your mom and dad is going to tell you so many other different things. Your best friend, your teachers might. But know that what is right for you will happen, and you get to decide that for you. Nobody else will be able to decide it. So when that time comes, really step into that power of, you are the conductor. You get to decide whatever the hell it is you want your life to be. And the path will be outlined for you when you start making that mental shift instead of being like, these things are happening to me. Why is this happening? And going, okay, what's the lesson here? How can I shift and take this moment and go, what's the moment I can learn from this?
Yeah. I mean, I love that, because we all have our ups and downs. We all have our problems, and social media, everybody has their own way of portraying their lives. But at the end of the day, it's not all roses. We all have problems, and, it's all perspective, right? Like one thing could be the end of the world to you or I, but then might not be anything to anybody else. So life's too short. We have to learn to adapt, and we have to move on. And some of the things that get us down, we can't let them get us down. We have to just, stay strong and move forward, and, make the most out of life. And I think that was a lovely message that you put out there, and I'm fully on board with that. I love everything you said. That being said, and my next question is, what is one book that inspired you to be who you are today?
Yeah. So I'm a big proponent of movement in terms of moving our bodies. It has a lot of power to shift our energy, give us energy. It's like a magic key that I really love to teach people. And I read this book during the pandemic, and I think about it a lot because it was just such a fun book to read that made me smile during a time period that was very, just challenging. And I read a book called The Joy of Movement, and it's by Kelly, I think it's pronounced McConaughey. And the book is about how movement just can create happiness. Like there's lots of studies around just things in terms of moving our bodies, whether it's through dance, even it's just like shaking, and looking at also how other cultures look at that as well. And so, yeah, the book is called The Joy of Movement, how exercise helps us find happiness. Actually, the full title is The Joy of Movement, How Exercise Helps Us Find Happiness, Hope, Connection, and Courage. Such a phenomenal book. Again, even if you don't not a big movement person, it's a great book that really gives a lot of science and anecdotal stories from people who have experienced a lot of joy just through moving their bodies.
Yeah. Speaking of movement, I know you do a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
So how could somebody actually follow you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Meet Brianna B. And I post content on there, and you can also then reach out to me personally in the link in my bio if you want to chat further. And that's the best place to get a hold of me.
I love it. I love your content on Instagram. I do follow you, and I watch everything you put out there. And I really enjoyed our talk today. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I know everybody out there listening hopefully walks away with some golden nuggets that you put out there. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.